It was, hey, we got water, this here will last forever. Well, no, it's not going to last forever.
New demands on agriculture on the Great Plains. And now some new answers from the experts.
The most fascinating thing was just watching them grow every day.
These are some pampered trout. Find out why they're off to such a good start in the wild.
If I saw a dozen bears in the backcountry in the summer, that was a pretty good summer. Now I can easily see a dozen bears in one morning.
Yellowstone grizzlies are back. But what's needed to keep their population healthy?
All right, I got one. I lost it.
And good luck catching these dragonflies. They've had 300 million years to practice those aerial maneuvers. Ready for takeoff? Those stories and more, now on This American Land. Funding for This American Land provided by the Weiss Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trusts, and the Turner Foundation.
Hello and welcome to This American Land. I'm Caroline Ravel.
And I'm Bruce Burkhart, starting our new season with some great stories on conservation of America's natural resources, its landscapes, waters, and wildlife.
You know, many of our shows focus on the conservation efforts on the public lands that belong to all of us as citizens. But 70% of land in the United States is privately owned. This season, we'll have stories about the conservation efforts on private lands.
A lot of farmers and ranchers get important conservation advice from the Department of Agriculture. And that help got started in the 1930s after the disaster of the Dust Bowl. Once known as the Soil Conservation Service, it's now called the Natural Resources Conservation Service.
We sent our crew to the Texas Panhandle to see how NRCS advisors are working with farmers and ranchers to conserve the Ogallala Aquifer, an underground water resource that's critical to agriculture in the Great Plains.
The Ogallala Aquifer is underneath 8 states in the central U.S., and it covers approximately 170,000 square miles. It's the water source for the breadbasket of the U.S.
We've got a little over 1 million acres of irrigated cropland, and a lot of these wells are dropping off.
We are starting to deplete the aquifer. You know, it was, hey, we got water, this here will last forever. Well, no, it's not going to last forever.
Water's the lifeblood of our area. Without water that we have underneath us, it would be like farming a desert. Our operation has grown since I first arrived in Moore County in '79 to 8,500 acres. We are predominantly all corn. I'm Harold Grawl. I'm a farmer in Moore County in the North Texas Panhandle. It has been a great life. This is what I consider my calling in life. It's to be able to farm. Things have changed dramatically over the years. When I first got here, we had abundant water. And then we got into the 90s, and weather started changing, and especially into the 2000s. It seems like weather was a lot more volatile. But it hadn't been until since 2007 that we've seen commodity prices on the rise that farming has proved to be very profitable for us. As farming has become more profitable, we're seeing more development all around us. So with all this new demand in our area, the water's dropping off a lot more quickly in season. Okay, this is our source well. So it's a huge challenge. Here we are, we're trying to leave water behind for our next generation, and at the same time, maintain profitability for our existing operation. There's a sense of urgency here. We need to do something. We can't be stopping and waiting 2 or 3 years before we start acting.
When we're coming out to work with these guys, usually they've contacted us and have a problem. I'm Mike Caldwell. I'm the district conservationist with the NRCS in the Dumas Field Office. Our area that we cover is big. We have to drive a lot of miles to see these guys and to be out in the field with them to know what's going on. And I think there's no substitute for being on the ground. How much water do y'all have here? Do you remember?
We have 2,400 gallons.
We probably spend 90% of our time assisting producers with irrigation projects, replacing pipelines, doing nozzle conversions where we can lower those drops, those sprinkler drops down into the crop canopy.
And if you have this thing in spray mode, you're going to have water spraying up in the air. And between the sunshine and the wind blowing, you're going to lose a lot of your water.
To evaporation. Harold's real innovative and is open to adopting new practices. He does a lot of no-till and strip-till farming.
NRCS plays a big part in this by giving us a funding available to be able to expand like our demonstration project.
What they're trying to do is show that they can grow somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 bushels of corn on 12 inches of water. And Harold's field that's in this project is in an area that's pretty low on water. And just looking at the field the last few days, the corn looks good. If they can get it to dry down and get it harvested, it'll be interesting to see what the yields are.
Looks like the yields are going to be a little bit higher than last year.
These guys have done some things that their practices, they've done them for years, and it's hard for them to change. And I think that goes with anything. But a lot of these guys, I think necessity and you know, just seeing their neighbor, he's doing some good things. So they're, you know, it's coming around. These producers know that the aquifer is depleted, and they know that they need to use the water in the most efficient manner that they can. Probably over the last 6 years, we've started growing quite a few acres of cotton, and it's a plant that's not using as much water, and they can rotate with other crops and include cotton in that rotation. Hey, David. David Ford's one of our more progressive farmers. Everything's good.
I'm David Ford. I'm a third-generation farmer in Moore and Hartley counties. Cotton is a crop that will respond to a little bit of water at the right time will make an awful lot of difference in what it'll yield. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot of water. We're having to learn, if we're going to continue to farm in this area under irrigation, we've got to change the way we're doing things, and we are. We're going to put wheat back here. I've gone to using strip tillage. We don't till the ground and rip it like we used to. Plow the ground so many times, it would look like a garden. With strip tillage, we leave an awful lot of organic matter on the ground, which helps keep the water from running off. Would have earlier. Yeah, there's still some moisture in it. A week ago, my grandson was going to church with us, and my wife asked him, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" He said, "Well, I want to farm." And she said, "Well, what if you can't farm?" And he looked at her and kind of frowned like, "But I want to farm." You know, we've got to be better stewards of what God made and what we've got, because there's not going to be any more of it.
The Natural Resources Conservation Service helped these guys improve their efficiency, and they're doing everything that they can to get the most use out of every drop.
We've talked about water conservation, and that's a nice word, but when it comes right down to doing it, and doing it at the extent that we need to now, we can't do it by ourselves. We got to have that helping hand out there to help us do that.
Teaching kids about nature can be a challenge inside a classroom, but some creative programs are taking kids outside, sometimes to streams like this, lets them get their hands dirty. Marsha Walton takes us to Northern California, where the lesson is all about saving an endangered native trout.
These second graders are on a mission so important, they're stopping traffic.
Okay, slowly, easy does it. Easy, you got lots of babies on board there, huh?
Who's ready to let their fry go?
How many fins do you feed the fishes?
Okay, find a good
$1
spot.
billion. It was actually really fun. I got to learn about what the science name was for a whole bunch of like their eggs. It was like an inch big, and it was just swimming around, and it just feels good to learn about it.
It's just great to see the kids take that responsibility and that ownership over another living organism and to really be proud of what they've done. Is our pH where we need it to for Lahontan cutthroat trout?
Yes.
Are our fry going to be happy?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm fishing!
Kids learn about the habitat these endangered Lahontan cutthroat trout need to survive. They're checking water temperature and pH, part of a project called Trout in the Classroom that gives them hands-on experience with this once abundant native trout.
When we bring the eggs, which honestly feels like a native species Santa Claus. The kids are all excited and then the teachers embrace it.
Missy Moeller is executive director of SWEP, the Sierra Watershed Education Partnerships. She works with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Trout Unlimited, and the Captain Planet Foundation to help teachers with this project.
So many times the little ones are like, I want to save the world, how can I start today? You know, they believe that they can, which is a wonderful thing. And Trout in the Classroom helps support that.
Lahontan cutthroat trout are a very fascinating species, the largest species of trout that we have in the United States, and records of it were up to 50, 60 pounds. Following European settlement out here had a number of pressures on them, which eventually led to their extinction in a lot of locales. So in Lake Tahoe, for example, you had the introduction of non-native trout, you had commercial overfishing.
Here come the hatchlings. Did we have some of these in our classroom?
Yeah.
I'll give you guys each a little fingerling to release. Okay, do you guys have a wish for your fish? Here, Cole, come right over here.
I wish that mine would have a safe journey.
That yours would have a safe journey? I wish that.
And
4, 3, 2, 1. Right down by the stream. 0.
Because the kids are connected to the fish and because they have that experience of releasing the fish, it really becomes their connection to the watershed and their connection to caring for the watershed.
Who can tell me what the eggs looked like when they arrived? Luna.
They were red and then had a little black dot.
What was the little black dot?
Their eyes. Look at their eyes, they're huge.
In this class at Tahoe Lake Elementary, the fish even got their own theme song.
Observing, counting, protecting, doing job, trout, biologist,
Does anyone know why we picked Lahontan cutthroat trout as to any other trout? Cody.
Because they're the native trout to this area.
Very nice. Yes, they are.
It was really interesting because we got to look at them from just little tiny eggs and watch them hatch, and then we got to look at them now and see how big they grew.
Oh, there he is. He's right there.
There he is. There's mine. I want to be a marine biologist. So do I. Me too.
Okay, there he went. I love our program, getting the kids to actually get, their hands dirty and to get out into the field is wonderful. It's so much more powerful than actually just sitting and watching a video or playing, reading a book.
All righty, you guys ready?
Yeah!
All right.
Students from Truckee High School got a little scientist to mentor and a little fish to release.
It's fun to see how much they know and then teaching them different stuff. We learn about the whole ecosystem and the rivers of Truckee.
We have 80 to 90 fish that have hatched, that have survived from our original 100 eggs.
What I saw during the past few weeks is that the fish went from little tiny eggs to alevin. So now that we're here today, we're gonna let them go.
They're probably like, I wonder what the big fish are gonna think about. Yeah, and I just hope they get to grow up and have a good life.
Yeah. And there's news just recently that the Lahontan cutthroat trout is making a comeback. Yes, at Pyramid Lake, where they traditionally have been, they're catching them now at 25 pounds.
Right here.
There you go. There you go. There he goes. Ooh, he went fast. He went really fast.
So we'll bring this out in the middle. We'll look at them. Everybody will get something to release, and then we'll just see how many we have.
I'm able to expose kids to so many different kinds of sciences. I see a lot of students going into science. I see a lot of girls going into science. And America, we need that. We need more kids going into science.
Every once in a while we get lucky and get to tell a conservation success story. And there's a particularly inspiring one in the greater Yellowstone area, in Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, where the grizzly bear is making a remarkable recovery under the protection of the Endangered Species Act. We partnered with Wyoming's Game and Fish Department to bring you this story about the comeback of this majestic creature.
The greater Yellowstone area is a large wild place, and grizzly bear epitomizes wild places.
If you ask an average visitor to the area, whether it's on the national forest or whether it's in the national parks, I think a lot of them have a desire to see wildlife, and one of the prime species that they want to see are bears, and particularly grizzly bears.
We know more about the Yellowstone grizzly bear and its habitat than we know about any bear population anywhere in the world.
When I started working in Yellowstone 30 years ago, it was pretty rare to see a bear. Even though I was working with bears and spending a lot of time in the backcountry, if I saw a dozen bears in the backcountry in a summer, that was a pretty good summer. Now I can easily see a dozen bears in one morning right from a road.
I think clearly the bear population has recovered. The science that's gone into monitoring recovery and the estimates of the population is some of the best in the world.
With the Interagency Grizzly Bear Study Team as kind of the leader on the research aspect of things, we estimate population size on an annual basis, and that's primarily done by monitoring the number of females that have cubs of the year with them.
And in addition, we monitor the health of the individual bears. We monitor their fat levels. We monitor them with GPS radio collars, so we get hourly locations on them 24 hours a day.
17.
All these new technologies are available to us today that were not available to us 30 years ago. So we have a much finer level of resolution about the health of individual bears and the health of the population.
We have very high density of bears, and the population seems to be doing very well.
Recovery involves a couple things. It involves the status of the population, of course, and how the bears are doing in terms of population health. And it also involves what kind of protections are in place. So can we be sure that the bears are going to remain healthy and that their habitat is going to remain secure? And under both categories, the health of the population and the management systems and protections in place, we can classify the grizzly bear as recovered today.
All the targets that have been set through the years have been met and are being continually met over the last number of years.
We see expansion of populations today into places where grizzlies haven't been for 100 years.
Idaho believes that the grizzly bear population has recovered. Now the bears are moving outside of the recovery area onto lands that are either state lands or in many cases private lands, or federal lands that have livestock operations or recreational activities on them.
We're constantly working with our cooperating agencies to try to make sure that what actions we're taking out there are going to work with keeping the bear recovered. And that's from our grazing permits, outfitter and guides.
The Endangered Species Act was not designed to keep wildlife species, plant species in an ongoing imperiled state. It's essential to meet the intent of the Endangered Species Act that we create circumstances where we have a recovered population and a conserved population of bears in the long run.
It will become our position as delisting approaches and occurs to continue to manage that bear for the good of all of the publics interested in that animal, from livestock producers who suffer conflicts and losses of their stock, to folks that really value the grizzly bear on the landscape, like to photograph them and see them in the wild.
Grizzly bears are an omnivore generalist, so I think almost any environmental change, grizzly bears are very well adapted to cope with. They eat a lot of different species. Things like climate change, I believe grizzly bears can cope with.
The expanding human population with the expanding wildlife population and the overlap of those, that's the number one thing I think that we're going to have to be very thoughtful and approach very carefully as we make decisions with the grizzly bear population, because both of those are happening.
As that expansion happens and that change happens, making sure that we're responsive to the needs of the human beings that are living there and not putting them in jeopardy, either in terms of their safety or their livelihood or really their recreation opportunity.
People, when they live, work, and recreate in the backcountry, they think of bears, you know, they don't leave piles of garbage in the backcountry. They secure their game meat carefully.
It seems to me that if you can recover an animal whose habitat needs are so great and so diverse in the middle of increasing human pressures across the North American continent, it really says a lot about people's willingness to adjust what they do to recover a species that's been listed as a federally endangered species.
It's important to realize that after recovery and delisting, the intensive science efforts will continue. And we'll continue to carefully monitor the bears and their health. So we'll have our hand on the pulse of the population, and we'll know immediately if there are problems. And then the managers can respond as necessary.
We should treasure things like this. It's got a tremendous intrinsic value, it's got tremendous economic value. I think that that's the reason that the American public has supported the great effort it's taken to conserve the Yellowstone grizzly bear, and that they'll be willing to do that in the future.
It kind of makes you feel good. It's truly a success story. The grizzly bear recovery is truly one of the great success stories in wildlife management in North America.
We should point out that in spite of this success, there are some scientists who say it's too early to take the grizzly bears off the endangered species list.
In our next story, we'll take a look at dragonflies, which have been with us since before the dinosaurs. These insects can pull off incredible aerial acrobatics. They can fly straight up, straight down, even hover in midair. In our Science Nation report, Miles O'Brien has more about how these four-winged flyers are inspiring aircraft designers.
This dragonfly is grabbing its meal on the go.
This attempt is so fast that unless we film it in high speed, we can't see whether it caught the prey, but when it gets back to its perch, if we see it chewing, we know that it was successful.
With support from the National Science Foundation, Harvard University biomechanist Stacy Combs wants to understand how dragonflies pull off these complicated aerial feats, hunting and even reproducing in midair. She and her team set up their lab near a pond outside Boston, right in the heart of dragonfly country.
All right, I got one. I lost it.
Yeah. Clearly, it's not easy to catch a dragonfly.
I got one.
Check out this frog. In this specially built netted enclosure, Combs' team set up 8 high-speed cameras. Then they release a dragonfly and some tasty fruit fly prey to watch what happens next.
They'll go up in midair, catch the prey with their hands or with their feet, turn upside down and glide back to the stick, and the whole capture will take maybe a second or a second and a half. This one is missing about half of its left front wing, and yet it still does an amazing job catching this fruit fly in midair.
It only takes about half a second for this to happen.
They caught, about 90 or 95% of the prey that we gave them. And interestingly, they're one of the most ancient groups of insects. They've had a long time to evolve their skills as predators.
About 300 million years. These four-winged insects predate dinosaurs. They can fly straight up, straight down, hover like helicopters, and disappear in a blur. And their eyesight?
Almost its whole head is eye.
They can see pretty much all the way around their head, except right behind them.
Dragonflies mate and lay eggs in flight.
Do you see her like just dipping in the water? Yeah.
She's trying to lay eggs, the male's trying to mate with her.
Combs says engineers are looking to the dragonfly for inspiration in small-scale aircraft design.
There's a lot of interest in building, small robotic devices.
And she says better understanding of dragonflies could lead to more effective mosquito control strategies.
They may consume 30 mosquitoes a day. They could even consume hundreds a day.
And that's an idea that could really take flight.
And here's a quick look at a story from our next show.
They've just got that attitude and that aura, like they know what's going on. They got heart.
And they've also got strong backs and sure feet. We'll show you how llamas can lighten the load on your next big hike.
Oh, you're already complaining,
Not
Bruce.
complaining. It's light.
Well, thanks for watching This American Land. And remember, you can always catch us at thisamericanland.org. We'd love to hear your comments.
We'd also like to hear any story ideas you think we should be covering. We'll see you next time.
Come on, Old Man River.
Young whippersnapper.
For more information about this program, visit thisamericanland.org. Funding for This American Land provided by the Weiss Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trusts, and the Turner Foundation.